through all their whole. Hey everyone, we're going to be getting started in just a couple minutes. Welcome everyone who made it to this, and for those of you who aren't watching live, that's okay, you just missed all the super special secret stuff we did earlier. Hey everyone, right before we start, I'm just throwing out some audio there. Make sure you guys can hear me correctly and that my signal is coming through all right. Hello everyone, welcome to our stream. Again, my name is Stanislaw Robert Liberto with AV Ultra, and today is a pretty special class for a few different reasons. One, we're doing a live stream, so we're testing out some new equipment. Sorry about the headphones, that's the best I can do for right now. And I am here actually with Warren Madsen from the 48-Hour Film Project here in Milwaukee. So we put together this class as a way to kind of introduce people to editing who may be a little intimidated by it. So the 48-hour, in case you guys don't know what it is, let me go ahead and pull this up. The 48-hour is, it is all about creating a 40-hour film from top to bottom in just 48 hours. So different cities will have different competitions, and then those cities, whoever wins, can go on to Filmapalooza. And it's a really fun time. It's really challenging. We're going to have ours here in Milwaukee on July 17th through the 19th. So that is next week. And you can still register if you're here in Milwaukee up until the 17th. It is just now 148. That being said, this isn't necessarily an ad for the 48-hour, but I wanted to put something together specifically for the 48-hour. So that's what we're going to be doing here. Let's talk a little bit about what this class is going to entail. All right, so it's a basic post workflow class. Let's say you shot everything and you've already put together your script and now you don't know what to do. You're like, I had this killer idea and what do I do with it now? Well, we're going to take a look at importing the different media and kind of what that looks like, and some things to be aware of with that in terms of where to store your media and how. Depending on how much time we have and how curious people are, we're going to do a deep dive into that. We'll also be talking about doing some basic editing and some of the tools that we use for editing. So again, if you are brand new to this should be great. If you're a little bit more seasoned, you should probably still get something out of this too. Basics are always good for a refresher. We'll be talking about some more advanced editing techniques, so maybe we'll go into J cuts or L cuts and kind of the trim tools as far as ripples and rolls and kind of how to craft a scene together and match some different shots up. Then we'll be adding some music, and we'll be animating a title from a graphic. And then we'll be doing a final export, and we'll talk a little bit about that process along the way too. So there's things to be aware of when you're exporting, how much time it's going to take, how big is it going to be, what kind of drive space you need, and kind of machines that you would need to use that. So let's talk a little bit, 1 second here. There we go. Who I am. So those of you who have been to my channel before probably know me as the tutorial guy making stuff for motion and Final Cut and motion VFX, but I've actually been a corporate trainer for over 10 years. I've been really lucky to travel across the country from coast to coast doing some different training. Incidentally, I got started in Adobe. So I was an Adobe certified instructor, and I did a lot of work with that. And I got started with motion more as a curiosity and thought, hey, this would be really cool to try and do the stuff I do in After Effects and motion, and that's where most of my motion lessons came from. That being said, before we begin, we're not going to be specifically focusing on Final Cut, but we are going to be using Final Cut for today. If you're not using Final Cut, that's okay. A lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about is going to be universal. So it's not going to be something that like, well, I don't have Final Cut, this class isn't for me. The topics I'm trying to teach you guys today is you can use anything you want, whether that's DaVinci Resolve, whether that's Vegas, whether that's Final Cut, doesn't really matter. Okay, so back on track. I was also a broadcast TV artist, so I worked over at PBS Wisconsin in Madison for a number of years, and I worked on a lot of different shows, being from live productions to scripted productions. So I went through the whole process of doing live graphics for news and show graphics. Pretty good time. Loved it there. Now I'm currently the motion VFX tutorial creator. I think there's a few of us there. So if you've seen any of the stuff that Motion VFX kind of puts together, or some of the techniques or tools that they have, a lot of that's me. And so I'll end up making those either with the team or by myself. And the goal is to give you as much tools as possible to make your work look as good as it possibly can. Okay, so I'm also the AV Ultra host and content creator. That being said, like, I'm always looking to work with other people, especially if you're in the Midwest or Milwaukee area. That being said, I'm not necessarily opposed to working with someone remotely. It's just a little bit harder, but hey, if you got some chops to work remotely and you really want to get down with doing some motion and Final Cut stuff, hit me up. I'd love to work with other people. And incidentally, I was the 48-hour Milwaukee Best Film winner of 2019. I put together a super sad story about me and my fiance that both had incurable diseases, and one of us was going to die, and you didn't know who, and it was grappling with that. And in no way did that come back to karmically bite me in the butt at all. Luckily, we're both very healthy, but the scare of everything going on right now has made it so much so that I don't even want to press that film so much, because it's kind of like I don't want to tempt fate. So that's where that landed, and probably why you may not have heard me pressing it so much. I was very proud of it, but it also kind of scares the hell out of me. And then lastly, I kind of have my dream job. I'm making videos for tutorials teaching people. I used to teach people in colleges. I used to teach people across the country. And now I'm teaching everyone everywhere. So that's really pretty cool. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with jumping into Final Cut and putting together an edit. I'm going to show you the edit that we're going to be putting together first, and then we'll jump into it. Tiny bit of housekeeping too is I do have Warren here who's going to be monitoring the chat with me. And when you guys have different questions, or if there's anything you don't understand, he's going to try his best to bring it to my attention. And I'm going to run through my different demos, but if we want to take a pause and answer something specific, I'll do my best to do that. And if afterwards you still have more questions, I'm usually pretty good about answering a lot of my different comments. Sometimes depends on how busy I am. So, okay, let's go ahead and jump into Final Cut. So this is the trailer we're going to put together here today. I'm going to make this full screen. It's going to be a little loud, so I'll probably adjust the audio as we go. Okay, so that's my trailer. It's a little over the top. It's a little ridiculous, but I mean that's good. That's good production, right? So let's talk about exactly how this is set up. So I'm going to start with kind of explaining where things are at here. So we have our main timeline. That's here at the bottom, and that's just all our clips. In fact, if I zoom in, you can see I don't have a whole lot of different clips going in here. I kind of strung this together really tightly, and their clips are just one right after the other. Let me disable this audio for right now so we don't hear that going through. And at the very end, I just have an image, and we just fade that in and fade that out. And then I have a couple audio tracks down here. One thing I want to talk about audio is way more important than a lot of people give consideration to. A lot of people will put together an edit and they'll focus so much on the video, and that's really only half the story. And bear with me on this. If you're on the phone with somebody and the connection is really bad, you just get annoyed. Like, if you can't focus on what's happening and what's going on, like, there's cognitive dissonance. In fact, me and Warren were talking about this earlier. As filmmakers, something that he does is he tries to remove a lot of the distractions. And audio can help do that and can help craft a little bit of a story. Just as a quick example, I'm going to play the same trailer back with a second soundtrack before we jump into the editing, so we can talk a little bit about that. Okay, so back here, and I'm going to turn off our original audio, right? That's what we had here. And instead, I'm going to turn on this other one, and we're going to play this back, and it's going to be a pretty big difference, I think. Okay, so I realized you couldn't hear a whole lot of that audio in the very beginning because I had my mic turned down a little bit. Sorry, user error. But I guess my point still drives that this is like a completely different film. It kind of took all the teeth away from how suspenseful that last one just was, and it feels kind of like, I don't know, like an almost done art house film. Like, is it a horror film? Is it a snuff film? What's going on with that? Where that first one had this driving pace to draw the story. So that's really what we're focusing on today, is kind of putting in as much as we can in a short order. So now let's jump back into that. Okay, so let's talk about these different areas now. So we have our timeline, and that's where everything is strung out. Over in the top right, that's our canvas. That's what we're looking at. This is our final result of everything that we have going on. So if I take this clip and I disable it, well, now it's gone because it's been disabled. And same in the points, if I disable this, now we just have that there. Okay, in the top left, this is all our media. Now, this might look different depending on which program you're using. If you're using like Premiere, it might look a little something more like this, where you have all your media here, but it's down in the corner. And then you might have a separate view, a viewer just for the clips in your browser. So if we go to, where's the browser here? Show an event viewer, show an viewer angles. Let's see, I should have practiced this part. Well, I'll have to come back to this because I apologize, I forgot about exactly where this is. But we can basically give a second browser window to review all these different clips. So that's going to be something that I'm going to have to fix in post. Anyway, so we can review all our different clips here, but this doesn't really give us a lot of information on this left-hand side as far as what we're really looking at. Like this just is a bunch of different names. We can easily change between this into a film strip view. And typically this is the way I will work to put together an edit, is I will have all the different clips either named or I will have different film strip views that I can string things together. If you notice here, they're kind of all over the place. Like we have this crime scene, then we have this guy over here. Some of these things have these weird lines on them, and there's a bunch of other stuff in here. And there are all these different dates. Well, how do we really navigate through this and how do we get started with this? So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project kind of from scratch, and we're going to create a new event. Think of an event almost like a warehouse where you're going to put all your media and everything. I'm going to call this trailer import. Inside here, you can see where it's going to be stored. And this is basically, think about this almost like a mini hard drive, collection of where you're going to put it. If you want to create a new project right away, your starting time code and video. If you don't know any of this stuff, that's totally okay. Most of these programs will just have automatic settings. And what that'll do is it'll set the project based on the first video clip properties. So that means if I drag in a 1080 clip or a 4K clip, it's going to automatically size it to that. So I'm going to open up my inspector here, and the inspector lets us see the ins and outs of everything that we have clicked on. So I've selected this clip. If I go to my info, I can see everything about this clip. I can see that it is 1920 by 1080 and it is at 25 frames per second. I can click on this clip and see that it is 3840 by 2160. Well, what exactly does that mean? Well, I'm going to drag this into my timeline here, right? So there it is, it's playing back, great. Now what happens if I drag this same clip into this timeline? Because effectively they have two different resolutions. We have one that's in 4K and one that's in 1080. So if I play this back, right? So we're going to jump from this one clip to this next clip. Now we've got these letterboxes. And that's because it had to stretch this out as much as it could to kind of fill that in that frame. So we just don't have those pixels. Now we can get around that. We can actually scale this up. We can manipulate this all we want in the inspector, but we'll come back to that. All right, so that's setting up a project. If I wanted to get rid of these by just hitting undo and drag a new clip in, it's going to say the video properties of the clips are not standard. It's saying, hey, what do you want us to do with this? We don't necessarily recognize this. And I'll say, okay, sure, whatever. That looks good. And notice that it still has these letterboxes because it's a non-standard shape. So even when it was shot, it wasn't necessarily standard. It probably already had these letterboxes in there, so it just shrunk it down. Other ones might be shot to just this crop. Just something to be aware of when you're putting clips together. Okay, so we have our trailer import. We have our first project here, and this is what we're looking at. There's that one clip. how do we get all our different footage into our different editing programs? Well, if we're using Final Cut, if you're using DaVinci, if you're using pretty much anything, you've got to import this into your project. So we're going to go to File, Import, and Media, or we can hit Command-I. That's going to open up an import window where you can choose your different locations. So I have an external hard drive here. Incidentally, I'll show you what that looks like. It is an SSD that I have connected. And this is everything that we're working with today. It's just a SSD and an USB 3. And I'm using the same one in my Atomos recorder that you guys are watching here. So it's super useful. I put it in there just because it's a lot faster than spinning drives, and that makes a big difference when you're pulling big files. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so I have some different areas inside my external hard drive. I've got an SD card where I've set up like a fake SD card, and this is just full of all our different clips. There's some audio in there too. I have a folder with some images. So there's that image I put together. And then I have these other items, which are our libraries. This is our collection of everything that we have in there. So technically, we're inside a library already, and I just want to import some of these items. So I'm going to import all of these different items. I even have some sound effects here at the very bottom. Where I put them is pretty important. I can add them to the existing event, that one that we just created, and that's the trailer import. Or I can create a whole new event. Say I'm starting from scratch and I want to kind of set an area of where I'm going to put my different clips. The most important thing to be aware of is this copy to library or leave files in place. What this means is how much space and where that space is going to take up from. If you copy it to the library, those little icons that you just saw in the purple are the Final Cut Pro library. If I have an SD card and I plug it in and I hit copy to library, it's going to physically move all those clips into the library. So you basically have two copies. You have the original copy on the SD card, and then you have your original copy on whatever drive you've copied it to. That's really important because if something doesn't exist in two places, I don't really consider it existing at all, because one day an SD card is going to break and one day your hard drive is going to break and that's going to be gone. Maybe it's not a big deal for a project, but maybe it's a huge project that is a make or break for your career. It's probably a good idea just to have two copies somewhere. But sometimes you can't do that and you have to leave the files in place. So what does that end up looking like? So if we leave the files in place, what that means is it's going to leave it on the SD card or wherever you got it from. Let's take a look and see what happens. So I'm going to take all of these clips and I'm going to import it. We're going to skip through all this right now. We don't care about this. And I'm going to close the window after importing. And it says, okay, I said add a valid name. We're just going to put in that trailer import all of it. Okay, so everything is brought in. What that did was just check to see, hey, what is this stuff? Can we bring it in? And that's it. Okay, so here's all our clips. And what I'm going to do right now is pretend to take out the SD card. So I'm going to go into Finder on my computer. You can't see this part right here. And I'm going to erase that SD card. So effectively, it's gone now. And so when I come back to Final Cut, oh boy, now everything's gone. Because I removed that SD card, it can't find any of the files because we said to leave it in place. So that's why it's so important when you're storing your clips, what you're going to do with them. If I had chosen to store in the library, then it would have created a folder and basically put everything in it. But if I take out that SD card and I didn't copy it anywhere, or I remove that drive, that's where we get all those missing icons, and that's a huge problem. Because now effectively, we don't have anything at all. In fact, Final Cut will warn us, and usually most programs will warn you by giving you a little information saying like, hey, something's missing. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put those back. I just undid all of that, and boom, everything is back. So if you plug in your SD card again, and everything suddenly comes back and you don't understand what's going on, try that out. Okay, so now we've got all these different clips, and I want to decide what I'm putting together in this project. So I might go through all these and decide how I'm going to craft this story. So I might want to organize this media because right now it's kind of a mess. And we have a few different ways we can do that depending on which program you're using. In Final Cut, I'm going to use keyword collections. And what keyword collections do, it's like meta tags. If you put a tag in YouTube and you put like hashtag Amazon, right? That lists it with it. Well, the same is true inside Final Cut. So everything that you're doing outside of Final Cut already on Twitter or whatever, you can do right inside Final Cut and easily find the exact clips you're looking for. So you can name it anything you want too, because you can give it landscapes or people, specific people's names. Doesn't necessarily matter. Here's what that looks like. So if I have this clip, by the way, you can see that I'm skimming through this and it's just playing back. Again, this is true basically in every NLE nowadays. You can do this in LumaFusion, you can use this in DaVinci, doesn't necessarily matter. If you want to turn that off, you can turn off clip skimming down here and it will just not do anything, but that's not really exciting. So I do like leaving clip skimming on because I'll review clips, especially if you have multiple takes. So for example, we have this here, they put on their ski masks and it's like, okay, well that's cool. What about this one here? Ski mask. So I might grab both these clips. Oops, let's grab one, select, and hit Command, and select another one. And I think I have another one or two of these, right? And now I want to create a collection of these. So I can just hit, let's see, where's my keyword collection? There it is. It did pop up. I thought I hit the right key and it didn't pop up there. It's just in the other window. My apologies. I thought I was going crazy. Command K. And it pulls up all your different keywords that you had. These are the last ones I just had used, and you can just remove all keywords from a specific clip clicking here. This is great because it gives you a quick shortcut key in case you wanted to attribute a bunch of different keywords to something. So in this case, I'm going to write ski mask, and I'm going to write bad guy. You know what? Bad dudes. Yeah. I like bad dudes. All right, so now anytime I select clips and I hit either Control 7 or Control 8, it'll apply those on there. And check this out. So now in my timeline, or in my media browser, I have this blue line. And if I open this up, I have bad dudes and ski mask. It looks like it only took that one, and that's okay. So we'll do this, and I'll hit Control 7, Control 8. And you can see that it's popping up on those clips. I must have just clicked something else when I grab my Finder window. So Control 7 and Control 8. And now, anytime I look up bad dudes and ski masks, that's right there. This is pretty huge, especially when you get to the point where you're working with maybe hundreds or even thousands of clips. So how does this relate to doing the 48-hour or doing something like a 1-minute trailer like this? I will kind of either craft a story beforehand or in my mind at least put together a story, because without that, you're going to be kind of shooting in the dark. So I've already kind of put together an edit in my mind, and we're going to get into that, but I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So we've got these different clips, and if I look at the file names, it doesn't really do me much good. I would just click this back. It says, 2 men wearing ski masks in a car. Omri, I got this from ArtGrid, so you can see where it is. But outside of that, that doesn't really tell me anything about this clip. Maybe I want to say, hey, I want to use this specific clip. Make sure that this one is one that we use in the edit. Or one that's just awful, like, yeah, I'm never going to use that. So maybe like I'm going to go through this clip. Let's close this. And decide, you know, this one's not going to make the cut. And so I'm going to hit delete. And that doesn't actually delete my clip. It just marked it as rejected. And so you can rate different clips just like you can songs. So I have this crime scene. And I have this green line here. So in the last one, we had a red line. And this green line is just right here and here. So what exactly is that? Here's the same clip. And I think to myself, you know what, this is great, but I only need this much. So I'm hitting my letter I key to about here, and my O key. And so I've created an in and out. And what effectively this is doing is it's taking the whole clip, which is this big, and we're just using this much of it. So we have this much on either side that's considered handles. And you always want a couple extra seconds of handles. And the reason for that is, let's say you're doing an interview and someone's smiling and they're like, you should vote for me for Congress. And then they instantly go bad, right? Like if you had 3 or more seconds of them saying like, you should vote for me for Congress, then you can do stuff with that. But if they instantly like turn their head and be like, all right, I'm done here, you don't really have that. And a lot of people shoot that way. They'll like go right to the end and cut it. Give yourself a couple extra seconds because you never know what you can do with that. Like I ended up doing that in a few different projects that completely saved my bacon. So think about that when you're actually shooting your different clips. So we have our in or out, and I really want to hold on to this clip. Don't mind the train if you can hear it in the background. I can hit the letter F, and that has now marked it as a favorite. And what I'll tend to do is go through all my different clips one at a time and be like, yes, I like this section here, I like that section here, and then I might start renaming them. So if you take a look in here, you can see I've already put some different numbers here, and they're all over the place, right? So I've got 22, 26, 27. That really doesn't do me a whole lot of good. I can choose how to sort these clips, and I'm going to choose to sort them by something called roles. And what roles are is it's just saying, okay, all of these are video. So now it's sorted all my projects, all my dialogue, all my effects, and then my video. And now that we can go through the video, I can sort by my name, and now I can see all the different clips that I've chosen and my in and out points. So this is something that maybe an assistant director would do, or somebody who's assembling the partial edit would do. Maybe even the storyboard artist, if they're putting together a storyboard for a different project, just to show people like, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. It's going to be a thriller. We're going to have this dude looking at stuff, right? Like, check this out, crime scene. Like, that's intense. That's good content. And then we're going to cut to different areas. Now we can go granular with this, and again, I can put in keywords and keep building this out, and that's great over thousands of clips, hundreds of clips, whatever. Now we have our clips, and we've set our in and out points. I've decided I really want to start with a landscape scene, kind of set where we're at, and I want to drag this right into my timeline. So that's really it. Now it's really small down there, so I'm going to zoom in. I'm just using a trackpad. You can also hit Shift-Z, and that just shrinks it down to the full length of your screen. And for right now, I'm going to close the inspector because we're not doing anything with that. A lot of times, I'm rearranging my workspace, and that's on purpose because I'm working in different ways. Right now, I'm assembling my edit because I've already put all these different clips, and I've already marked them. And because I've already marked them, and I say, okay, this is what I want here and here, I can just use shortcut keys to drop them right in my timeline. So if I have a bunch of clips already set up, I can select it and hit E to append it to my timeline. If you're in Premiere, it's going to be, I believe, period or comma. And we can just go right down the list and just keep dropping them. And it's going to use the areas that I've set as in or out points. So I can just go right on down my list. In fact, let's check this out. If I just take all of these, and so this is actually made up of 30 clips. And let me select this number 4, hold on to Shift and select that and hit the letter E. And now that has put all of those right into my edit. So I'm going to play this back. It doesn't have audio right now, and we're going to see what happens as I'm playing this back. So right now it's playing back fine. It looks like it's having a tiny bit of a hard time. And some of these other clips, other ones seem like they're playing fine. This one's a little slow, so there might be some speed ramping on this. And I can already tell I have a total duration of 1 minute and 8 seconds and 6 frames when I want to get this down to exactly 1 minute. By the way, I can see that right here. This is giving me the total duration of my project right here. All right, so I can go into any of these different clips and start working with this a little bit more. So maybe now I want to put on some speed effects. Like, for example, the way a couple of these were shot in a bit of a slow-mo. So when they were brought in, they're playing back very, very slowly. I believe like the investigators here. Looks like I'm having a little bit of a hard time because this is unrendered, and I'm doing quite a lot on this little mini MacBook, so we'll see if this is going to behave. But while that's doing that, let's talk about how to speed ramp different clips. So if I take a different clip, and this is great, this might actually crash on me, I might have to restart it. Speed ramping different clips is effectively, when you're playing back a clip, you're playing it back in however many frames per second it was shot in. So typically when you're watching something, it's shot in 30 frames per second, and that's what people expect in North America, whereas in Europe they're watching at 25 frames per second. If you're shooting in, say, 60 or even 120 frames per second, like slow-mo on your iPhone, when you're playing that back, you're playing back 30 frames a second, but you have 120. So it's kind of like you're dealing out cards. You're only dealing out 30 every second, but if you have 120, you suddenly have way more than you would think. All right, so it looks like this decided to come back to life. So maybe, we'll see. All right, we've got this clip I know for sure is quite slow, right? If I go in my inspector, it might say 30 frames per second because they've kind of baked it into 30 frames per second, but I'm going to speed ramp this in Final Cut by hitting Command R, and that just pulls up how fast I want this to go. So I'm going to take this to about 200%. And I want to say this shot around 60 because of what I noticed on it. So I'm also going to speed this one up. It's a little bit slow. All right. Now you may notice that I'm getting some performance issues. Before it was playing back fine, now not so much. What's going on? Well, because we put a lot of different clips in here, you might see this little dotted line. And this little dotted line is telling me that Final Cut hasn't rendered something. So let's have a quick conversation about rendering inside any kind of video editing program. You may be throwing 4K footage into your video and then adding effects onto it. So the effects might have to put different shaders and new graphics on top of that. To play that back in real time, a lot of NLEs create new frames based on the math and information of the effects that you've put on there. And when you're mixing lots of different frame rates and mixing lots of different resolution, it's pulling those pixels like we talked about before. So if I put a 1080 into a 4K feed, it is stretching it out and it has to draw those new pixels. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be something you're going to want to watch. So that's something to keep in mind when you're putting these different things together. Yeah, did you have a question, Warren?
Yes, Final Drive is asking, is there a way to set a clip's time code to 0 before placing it into the timeline? For example, a 10-second clip will not show 0 to 10 seconds. Instead, it shows the timeline's duration.
Yeah, okay, so that is a great question, because if we go into our time code, and for those of you that don't know about time code, I'm going to very briefly talk about that. Imagine a clock. There's 24 hours in a day, right? So if it is exactly 1:35 here, it is 13:35. And if I'm recording on my Atomos recorder right now, I can say, hey, tomorrow, show me the clip that I shot at 13:35. And what our questioner was asking was, how do you set that back down to 0? Because that could totally screw things up, especially when you're making notes on paper of like, okay, this clip number 217 used time code 10 seconds to 14 seconds. Okay, but is that 10 seconds from the beginning, or is that 10 seconds from 1:35 p.m. according to the time code? So that's a great question, and let's jump into that. The easiest way I can think about doing that is, right, if you have this start, is make it a compound clip. And what a compound clip is going to do is it's basically like nesting it. And you can do this in various different programs. If you're doing it in Premiere, you're basically just nesting your comp, or you're sandwiching, pancaking your comp. That's almost exactly what's happening in Final Cut and all of these different programs. So don't be intimidated by it. That's just what's happening. So we have this clip, right? It has a start duration of 14, 28, 23, 18, 00. Oh, that's nice that they had 00 in there. Okay, and we want to make this 00. So let's go ahead and group this. I hit Option G and make this a new compound clip. And check this out, starting time code. So right here, you can say 00 and go nuts with it. So we'll do that. And now if I go up, I'll have to probably go to the bottom here. It's, let's see, there it is. Untitled compound clip, start code 00. If I go into this, right, I can still go into this. Check it out. It opens up a mini timeline of just this clip. And it still retains the original information. So if I go into there, I can still dig around for it and get that information. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to get out of there at this time. Okay, it's about 1:37 right now, so I want to drill through a few more things of this. So we were talking about how to fine-tune some of these edits, right? So I've put together this edit, and all these clips are from ArtGrid. ArtGrid is a stock footage company, and it's pay one fee, and then it's download all you want. So it's a really great service. I've been using it a lot. And we want to fine-tune right here where we have these gentlemen kind of put on their masks, right? Like it'd be great to, can we have start this clip? In fact, let's find this clip in the browser. Because if I find it in the browser, I can see if I go a little bit further past here in all this extra media, I can see, hey, that's him putting on the ski mask. And it'd be cool to get a cool cutaway shot of that. But I have this clip in here. So do I just make new in or out points? Wouldn't it be great if I could just take this and pretend it was an actual film reel? So we have our film here, it's in a frame, and we just slide it over so we can get to that new footage without messing up where it is inside our timeline. So what do we mean by that? So if I click on this, right, I can just move it around and it's got that magnetic timeline action going on. I love it. I don't know why people complain about it. It's the best thing that's ever happened to video production, personally for me. I want to use different tools. And in Premiere, these are pretty widely displayed, and in Resolve, these are pretty widely displayed. And in Final Cut, it's just a small little drop down because most people don't need a lot of these, or if they do, it's just for one or two things. So we're by default in our select. What we want to do is go into our trim. And if you'll notice, our playhead completely changed. It's no longer this arrow. It's got these two arrows pointing in two different directions. So that's letting you know right away, like, hey, if you go in between these two clips, check out what happened to my browser, my viewer here. In fact, let me collapse this over here. In fact, let's just close that completely. We don't need that right now. And I can scrub between these, and it's showing me the last clip of this on the left, and the first frame of this clip on the right. So you can see, okay, he's going to put it on right here. Let's actually take it to somewhere around here, right? He's reaching for that. Now, if I go over here, if I was in Premiere, I would have to go to a different tool. But Final Cut knows, oh, you're in a clip. Okay, so let's just slide this over. And it's doing the same exact thing that it was showing us before, except before it was showing us the first and last of two different clips. Now this is showing us the first and last frame of this clip. So it's a little sluggish right now, but I'm going to drag this over here. And we're getting it to the point where he's about to put on that ski mask about halfway. So like right here. So on the left, that's the first frame in the yellow bracket. On the right, that's the last frame. So I'll play this back. I'll see what this looks like. Right, so now we've got to fix this one. So same process. I'm just going to take this to right about here, right? We're going to get to right where he's reaching for it. Maybe right there. Looks like it's a little further down. Okay, so we'll take it to there. But this is how fast it is when you're editing to just smooth that over. And now instantly, that's like a way better cut than we just had started with. Okay, so let's now talk about importing and just briefly animating an image, right? So we wanted to put our title image over our villain here. He's a nice looking guy, friendly, right? And we want to put an image and fade the title on. We're not going to go too deep into animating today. We're not going to dig into like too many keyframes and like all the cool stuff you can do. That's tomorrow, so come back tomorrow. But here's my title, and I'm going to drag this and place it above, right? So when you're placing clips above, right, it's going to go in priority of what's on top. So as another example, I'm going to grab this clip, doesn't matter what it is, and I'm going to place it over our gentleman putting on the ski masks. And this is kind of like a cutaway clip, right? Interesting, check this out. So in this footage, we have two totally different frame resolutions. So this is something that would absolutely want to fix. So one, we have this one clip on top of this other clip, and two, we can see the clip underneath it. So what if we really wanted to use this clip? Well, we'll have to go into the inspector, and this is where we're going to be doing our keyframing and other stuff anyway. Our inspector has our information, color controls, and our video properties. I'm going to take this and I'm going to just scale this up just a little bit. Now, we're technically pulling pixels here. So if something is shot in 4K and you're stretching it way out, you're pulling those pixels. It's going to dither it. It's going to reduce the quality a little bit. But I find that if you go up to like even 110, 115%, most people really don't notice. And there's so many great programs out there as far as denoising and scaling now that it's really not that much of an issue. I know other people are going to complain about it, but I mean, it's about a fight like with everything. Like, no, you should never do this. I find that people, Fortune 500 companies, stuff that has gone live nationally, didn't care when I scaled it up to 115% at times. Maybe I had to smooth it over. So don't be afraid with it. I mean, it's just a tool to be used. Okay, so now that we understand that, we can scale this up. I could probably scale this up a little bit further, right, to cover that completely. We'll go over to this one here. And if I play this back, it's just going to pop on. And the reason for that is because it doesn't exist at this point, and then it does exist. So there's no animation happening in between. If we wanted this to, let's say, fade on, we can use a transition. Now, Premiere, DaVinci, all of them have different transitions. Most of them work pretty similarly. What we're doing is going from point A to point B. So it's not like a whole lot of special effects are happening here. We're just kind of laying two clips on top of each other, and this one we're fading out, while this one we're fading up. That's pretty much a transition in its broadest terms. Everything else is how you make that happen. So let's take a look at these transitions. I'm going to start with just a regular cross dissolve. And if I hover over these, it gives you a little preview of what these different transitions look like. And I'm going to just drag this right onto this clip. All right. So you can see a couple things happen. It's got this weird gray thing here, and that's letting me know that it's going to fade up. Right? Well, I might have to actually render that first, so let me turn on my rendering here in the background. And this is a great conversation to have about rendering, because depending on the machine and the different drives that you have connected, rendering can take a long time, and it can take up a whole lot of space. I'll show you a kind of a before and after of what's happening. In fact, you can see that it's taking so much so much power from my computer right now that my feed is actually becoming a little bit choppy as it's trying to handle everything. I'm pushing everything through an iMac right now, so it's just a little choppier. And as we're rendering, you're going to see this little line go away. And the main reason for rendering is so that way you can see everything play back in real time. So, because it's creating new frames, it's an uncompressed or a much less compressed version of the footage that you're dealing with, so everything plays a lot smoother. We're going to talk a little bit more about that with proxies tomorrow. So if you're around here tomorrow, we're going to be doing the same kind of stream, but we're going to be taking the same edit further, and we're going to be talking about proxies. So those of you that are shooting on like a DSLR or a mirrorless camera and then bringing it in, and it is so slow to edit that it makes you want to pull your eyes out, proxies are your friend. Also, rendering, because rendering will take care of all that problem for you, but there's a cost of space. So that's something we're going to talk about tomorrow. Now that this is pretty much rendered, if I play this back, you can see as I'm scrubbing, it's a lot smoother. And if I get over here, it's having a little bit harder of a time. I'm going to just render just this section here. I don't know why I didn't render just this. Render selection. And we'll let that jam on there for a little bit. And it's pretty quick. I have an iMac behind me with an eGPU that's a little bit quicker, but that's all right. So now we have that fade on, and let's actually just render this whole caboodle. And the shortcut for that is Control R. I'm pulling this up too so you can see. Often I'll just use the help because I forget whatever the different shortcuts are. Okay, but so now that's fading on. If we didn't want to use a transition, we could get rid of it and instead keyframe the opacity. This is essentially going to be doing the same exact thing. The opacity is how much transparency, it has. The image itself is a PNG that has an alpha. That's why you don't see black behind it. You just see the words. But if we take this opacity down, it's like a volume control for the visual of this. I'm going to set this to 0 and click this button, and this makes a keyframe. And I want it to fade in really slowly to here as he turns his head. Well, I'm just going to drag this to 100%. And now from here to here, it's going to slowly animate on because it's using that information. Now, I want to say that Final Cut isn't necessarily that great with keyframes. In fact, I kind of hate keyframes in Final Cut because they're very limited to what you can do because you're not really supposed to be doing a whole ton of keyframes inside Final Cut. Final Cut is more of an assembly editor, and then you can put effects and stuff on top of it. However, the industry is kind of changing and more people are doing effects directly in their edit, and whole plugins are coming directly into Final Cut where they used to be specifically just in a VFX source. Okay, so we're going to jump back to this and add in our audio and work with our audio and finish up this edit. So I'm going to add in a few more transitions. I'm going to hit Command T to put in my default transition, and I want this to fade out. And we'll go to the very beginning here, and I'm going to hit Command T, fade that in. And I'm working right now with a picture lock, which means I'm using the picture to kind of drive things. I'm also going to shorten down a few things here or there. And it's just as simple as dragging them to shorten my clips. And now let's add in our audio. So if I go to my rolls here, and it's a little hard to see, so I'm going to pull this back over here. I have what it thinks is dialogue. It's just music. And then I also have some audio that's included with Final Cut. In fact, in Final Cut and Premiere, YouTube, even LumaFusion, they all have like music and stuff included now. So there's not a whole lot getting in your way of putting something together. It may not be the best music, but I mean, it's like, it's free. It's pretty cool that you can get something. Okay, so we've got our audio here, and if I scrub through, you can hear it. If I hit spacebar, there's my edit, right? So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before by just dragging this directly into my timeline, and let's play that back and see how that sounds. Okay, so there's our music. That's great. We've got a little bit of time here. Are you guys cool if I just kind of jump in a little bit further and go into something a little bit else? Okay, so I talked a little bit about J and L cuts. And JLL cuts are really important because, let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. This is a thing I put together with my friend George Edmondson from Seed Creative. We've been doing some stuff with this. Let's stop on they're all terrible frames. Okay. I'll make George look silly. We've been putting together this group called Video Creators That Care About Making Money, and it's just kind of this fun thing we've been putting together. And we've been shooting everything remotely, so I'm shooting everything in my studio, and then FaceTiming him on top of my camera. He's doing the same thing. And then I take all that footage and I marry it together with a multicam project. And this is very typical what you have with dialogue in different films. So let's jump into that and take a quick look at that. So I'm going to play this back here. It's just a dumb little intro, no graphics or anything. I'm Stanislaw from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
What's up, everybody? My name is George Edmondson. I am a full-time video creator. I own a small video production company in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Yeah, that's enough free press for George. Okay, so if you're looking at my timeline, it looks completely similar, but also it's got these weird icons on here. So this is a multicam clip. And you can do multicam in most of the other different NLEs, I believe all of them. In Final Cut, it's called angles. So if I show the angles, it shows me both clips at once. And this is actually how I cut together multicam stuff, is as it's playing back, I can just pick, and then it automatically cuts. So that's pretty cool, right? But what if we don't want to necessarily do a multicam clip? Maybe instead we just have two of them stacked like this, which is a little bit more traditional when people aren't using multicam. We just have two clips. We have two clips on top of each other, and we got to cut sections out, right? So if I cut this here and pull this in here, and I'm going to let George talk.
With phantom power, so like right now I'm on the
Yeah, that's a dumb looking face of mine. Right.
boom through a atom can.
Right, so it just jumps back and forth because what we just saw, there's that hole there. Well, what if we wanted the audio from me, right? Like, let's say I'm talking here.
And so, yeah, it's cool to have like a.
So I'm going to cut this right there.
With my new light.
So what if I want to use the audio from there, but I want to see George? So typically we'd be separating the video from the audio. And in Final Cut, that's just a little bit more difficult. We can still do it several different ways, but the way I like to do the most is to detach the audio. And you can work with rolls and do it this way too, but I found that this tends to work a little bit better for me. So now with my detached audio, I'm trimming my video down. These are no longer connected, by the way. We can still keep them connected if we work with rolls, but now my audio will play with George's video and then jump to my video.
LED panel right now, and it has V mount, and so you can just pop. That's the light that I'm using right here. So you can just pop the.
Right, and so that's very traditional when we're doing these kinds of edits, and so I really wanted to show you guys some of that. One other thing that I wanted to show you guys is working with audio. So, for example, we want to cut out my So right here.
V panel right now, and it has V mount. And so you can just pop. That's the light that I'm using right here.
Right. We don't necessarily need that. So I'm going to zoom into there, and we have a couple different options. I can use the range selector, and this is just like using in and out points. And I can say, okay, I don't want this. I'm just going to delete it, and it cut a hole out of there. I don't necessarily like doing that because what if it's like, well, what's over there, or what was in there? Instead, what we can do, and this is going to be a little hard to see, so I'm going to adjust this a little bit. We're going to make this a little bit bigger. All right. By the way, if you don't know how to do any of this stuff, or if you're brand new to Final Cut or Premiere, I have a ton of these lessons on my YouTube channel. I'll show you guys afterwards. Instead of getting rid of it, I'm going to drop this, and we're going to duck the audio. So if you ever heard that term, audio ducking,
1000 LED
that's what this
right
is.
now, and it has V mount. And so you can just pop. That's the light that I'm using right here. So you can just pop the V mount battery on, man, and you can rock. It'll.
So that's the way I like to put these things together. I wanted to show you guys that today. I'm going to wrap up here in just a minute here. We'll go back to that edit. And I want to give you guys just a little bit of a preview of some stuff for tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to be taking this edit just a little bit further, and we're going to be using some different effects. We're going to be putting some titles and things on here. And yeah, let's take a look at some of this. So I've got some titles coming here. Same trailer that you just saw. There's just a little bit more look to it. Right? And so we're going to be getting into this. We're going to be talking about color correction, M-film look, because I've used that here, so that just popped up in here. I'm going to be talking a little bit about adjustment layers. Again, it's a little weird in Final Cut, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into that and some of the other tools. I'm also going to talk a tiny bit about tracking. So we have a lot of different plugins for Motion VFX. This isn't paid for by Motion VFX or anything like that, but we have a lot of different plugins that use Mocha, and I want to be talking a little bit about tracking and how to attach things to things in your video. So if you've ever been wondering how to do that or how to get started with tracking, that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. I'll also talk a little bit about denoising footage. So we'll be using Neat Video, and I'll probably post this trailer for this edit later today if you guys are interested. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to the chat and see if you guys had any other questions. All right, I don't think you guys have any questions, and that's all right. So that's pretty much my lesson for today. While we're still here, I want to talk about a couple other things. I mentioned AV Ultra earlier. That is my YouTube that you're on now, so it's a commercial for the commercial that you're watching, much like a theme song, right? I never really understood that. So if you're getting started with motion graphics or Premiere, Final Cut, After Effects, Element 3D, and a bunch of other tutorials from Motion VFX, I've got a whole bunch of different stuff there. So make sure you check them out. And I'll get to that as soon as possible, to updating some more stuff in there. And if you're looking for more Motion VFX stuff, or you're curious about some of those tutorials, they have them all on their website too. I just put together the M-Channel Clean tutorial that came out last week. I love it. I'm actually going to be using it specifically just for my channel going forward. And if you're talking about music, I mentioned music. This is Artlist, and I use Artlist a lot. I love it. It's got pretty good range. Not all of them are perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect place to get stock music or stock video, but Artlist is pretty cool. They do some really nice things. You can search by mood, video theme, genre, instrument, etc. So that's what I've got for you today. If you guys are taking part in the 48 hours, good luck. I'm going to be taking part again. I have no idea what I'm going to do yet. Me and my fiance, who's my film partner, are thinking about all these different projects that we want to do, and we're just waiting to see what's going to happen. And if you're not doing the 48 hour, that's totally okay too. Like, the 48 hour is an excuse to make a film. It's like, sorry, I'm busy making 48 hour. I mean, I'm making video every day. I'm sure you guys are too. It's just a good exercise to go through the whole process, because when you have only 48 hours, man, that clock is ticking. So last thing, exports. We didn't really talk about exports, and I'm running just a little behind, but thanks for bearing with me. We've got this all ready to go. How do we get this outside of Final Cut and back onto the web, or wherever else we want to put it? Depending on how you export is going to take some different time. So if I go to File, Share, we have all these different choices. Most people are just like, I don't know, it's going to YouTube. Well, what's the difference between YouTube versus Apple devices? What's the master file? In fact, if I go to, let's say, okay, let's do Apple devices 4K. It's going to say 152 megabytes. It's telling me it's going to be 1 minute, 0.2 frames. It's at 4K at 24 frames per second, stereo. And if I look at the settings, I can say, okay, something that says faster encoder, better quality. I want it faster. Spoiler, better is usually better. And then the format. So Apple devices, computer, this used to make more of a difference. It doesn't so much anymore. Like, you see the file size change, and it has to do with compression, but it doesn't matter as much. If I go to video and audio and I change it to ProRes 422, check this out. It's going to be 3.6 gigabytes. So even though it's 3.6 gigabytes, you might need 10 gigabytes of space on your hard drive just to get it out. So a lot of people are like, how do I make this smaller? How do I store this in a way that I can upload? And the short version is, that's kind of the price of playing video. Like, video has never been smaller or faster or cheaper to produce. So media drives are kind of like the blood of it. It's kind of like the oil of a car. Like, I might use a hard drive for a couple of years. That's worth like $100. That's going to be a couple terabytes. So I hear a lot of people like very concerned about that. Drives have never been faster, they've never been cheaper, and they've never been bigger. So I don't really follow that argument as far as how much space it can take, because almost everybody has like a 64 gigabyte SD card nowadays. So I know not everyone has the means to do that. And if you do need to go somewhere with something smaller, H.264 is a pretty good bet. And I believe that's what we're using, or what Warren's using for the Milwaukee 48 hours. So this would be the way that you export it and then decide where you want to save it. And then it takes time to actually render. So remember how I was rendering here and then I didn't render here? Well, Final Cut will have to render everything before it can actually get out. And it's got a bit of a progress bar, and it's going to go a little bit slower now because I'm also streaming at the same time. So I might have just crushed this. Oh no. Let's see what's happening. Oh boy. All right, that might be it for today. I guess exporting out of Final Cut while streaming killed the stream on the most unflattering of my possible frames. So that is the look of horror, and that is accurate. So I guess that's it. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and have a great day.
Well, you have a backup.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Sorry about that.